Hi, my name is Joanna Whitney. I am an intuitive artist and a student of natural law, and I'm going through the on conflict and consensus handbook for formal consensus decision making. And I'm on page 51, generic versions of 4 founding documents. And I'm just continuing to read them and talk about my experience with groups and to try to help people to understand that we actually have to expend some energy and effort to learn how to have a horizontal freedom group rather than just create another tyranny. Um, so um, I'm just going to read this here on page 51. It says generic versions of 4 founding documents. The following 4 documents are designed to be templates to modify as desired. The first one, the generic vision statement, is a pithy statement of the group's purpose and values. Ideally, the statement will change only slightly over time. Therefore, the statement should by design be broad and general. So that means that the statement should be concise and clear, as well as being general to be able to encompass the group's vision statement and where it can go over a period of time. The second, general principles, is related to the first in that this document, each idea in the vision statement is defined and described at length and in great detail. It is not broad and general. It is the definition of the specific principles and purposes adopted by the group's consent. This document is designed to change frequently, theoretically, and with every decision. It is where decisions made by the group are accumulated according to the purpose or value it refines. So I'm just going to share my experience with this. Okay. If a group takes the time to do these things, it can be very effective because it will create unity in the group and it will create a conscience of the group itself so that the people in the group are individuals, but it will create almost a separate entity that is the group. And the people will not just be thrown together with a vague idea of what they're doing together, but they'll have a common goal. I'm sure people have experienced this in the past, but it's in the past because now how things are going is we just jump in together because we say we're in the freedom movement and we want to maybe, do some prepping or something like that. But then as it turns out, the leadership has no idea what the group itself wants, and it seems to become another tyranny in my experience where leaders are telling people what to do. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't do well with people telling me what to do. I can be very argumentative, like just react when I feel like someone's telling me how to think or what to think. I just don't do well with that. So especially because we have been traumatized by past events recently, COVID bullshit or whatever. I think people do need to feel heard. And people are still talking about the trauma of COVIDiocy, I will call it. When I meet new people now, I mean, we're still talking about that with each other. So I see that we're not done processing that experience yet. So it is of even more importance that we feel heard by each other and feel like we're really a part of a group that we're in and have a common goal, have common goals, have common principles that we can fall back on to use when we are confronted with new situations. And I do have a current experience with this, you know, being that I'm a founding member of the Front Range Hours barter currency. We do have a group of people that meets face to face every month, and then we meet on Zoom as well, and we talk, but we are committed to meeting in person to make major decisions so that we present a united front to the public. And so far, that has been highly beneficial, and we are building a foundation of something that appears to actually stand a chance at working. And I'm quite sure we're going to face some difficulty, but we have adopted formal consensus and we have a set of principles that we're using. And we are creating unity by our presence together. So I am an advocate for this method, whereas I saw the other barter market just fall apart because it was thrown together and there was no common set of principles amongst the group that was sort of thrown together. And in between December and March, with each meeting, I saw that group change. Each group of people that showed up were different, and now it doesn't even exist anymore. So maybe the thing that it is right now will last because one person is using it as a class, and maybe that will work. But the group of people that got together in December and wanted to have a barter market to create a parallel economy for the lower Denver metro area did not get that. They didn't get what they came for. But here we are, and we are still together. I think our first, well, we could count our first market as January 16th, and here it is April, and we've had 2 markets, and we're planning our third for May 13th, and we have the next 6 months lined up. And we have growth also. So it is pretty amazing when you do take the time to build the foundation for the group itself. All right. The third general nonprofit bylaws is the generic nonprofit bylaws is the bylaws for nonprofit organizations using consensus decision-making. In theory, organizations that use consensus would be horizontally structured. This means there would be no board of directors who legally would have more power and responsibility than the rest of the membership. A structure that utilizes a board of directors is called an oligarchy. There is a board of directors in this template because the state requires a structure. Having all members on the board of directors creates a horizontal structure in keeping with the spirit of consensus. Okay, this is where, you know, first of all, I would never recommend anybody do a nonprofit anymore because it's connected to the government, and we saw what happened to nonprofit churches during the lockdowns. They were told that if they didn't lock down, they would lose their nonprofit status. So, you know, if you had to do a church or a group, I would recommend a private membership association or a private club. The only reason to have that would be if you'd had a bank account, you know, you'd have an EIN number, and then you'd have a bank account. Otherwise, just being a group of people that is a loosely formed group. Perhaps it would be best if it was within a trust, but I wouldn't recommend a legal trust using lawyers. I would do it myself using the methods that are being distributed now by Raymundo and Kalen and Charlie Danielson in our community. Like there's different ways to do things that don't require lawyers. I wouldn't do anything that required any kind of legal, because I would prefer to stay in the private and not have any affiliation with the state in any way. But you guys can do your own research on that. That's one thing. So, but you can use nonprofit bylaws. You can go on the internet and look up like cooperative bylaws to look at, and then just use those if you wanted. More structure, like if it was going to be, let's say, a cooperative of some kind, you could have membership agreement. However, like what they're saying here, this is this paragraph that's going to really freak everybody out. Okay, the idea that that there is no board of directors, that everyone is on the board of directors. That's why you need this kind of way to communicate, so that no small group or large group of people can come in and carpetbag the original intention of the founding members of the group. But at the same time, there's no oligarchy created out of the fear that is produced when you don't have a structure for decision making. There really is no way around this, unfortunately. You know, everybody wants to find a way around it, because what I see anyway, and I you know, everybody, when I say everybody, this is just my experience of what I've seen and experienced through my life. And I've been in a lot of groups. Nobody just wants to take the time necessary to give everyone the mic. Not, you know, we want to give lip service to that, but we don't actually want to do it. Because why? We're innately self-centered and believe that we know it's right. And, you know, we don't want to hear from everybody in the group. But it's just simply not going to work if we don't, because we've already seen over and over again, even in our freedom groups, that they fall apart because it feels like a tyranny. And I even see it. I see it everywhere, honestly. You know, we get comfortable with what we have, and then we don't want to open our doors to other people's input. But that's why we have this. We have a way to include everyone's point of view without letting them take over what we have created. But it does take time to do that. It's not an hour long meeting. And we're under this mind control that there is something more important than this thing that we're doing. So I just want to let that sink in, you know, just let that sink in, that there would be a way that everyone could have input into your special project without taking your special project away. And without, you know, making your special project into an oligarchy by keeping people out and keeping other voices out. The fourth generic organizational structure is a model of how to arrange and operate your organization. Transparency is a value in consensus decision-making. Every organization should have a chart or outline that shows the kinds of meetings, committees, and roles it utilizes, and a handbook or document that explains the function and purpose of each meeting, committee, or role. So, let's see now. All right, I'm going to read the first one of these. All right. generic vision statements, chapter 1. Common unity is faith in action. So this is just a really interesting statement. First of all, take the word common. Remember, we used to have common sense. Common sense is derived from a society that has a common values. Let's say morality, for example. You know, morality is non-denominational. You can be of any denomination and have common morality, because morality is inherent to earth, and that is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And it protects our inalienable rights granted by the Creator. So if we had inalienable rights granted by the Creator as what we had in common, then we could have unity, because we would so for example, I'll give you a few of these inalienable rights. I have the right to property. I have the right to privacy. I have the right to my own lair. I have the right to contract, the right to self-ownership. I get to decide what goes in and on my body. The right to contract basically means that I have the right to make agreements with other people without any interference from any other outside organization, especially if I guarantee my products by keeping my word. You know, if they break, you know, then I take them back and give the person their money back, or fix the product. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you, the right to contract. The right to own property means that I have a right to a reasonable amount of property for myself to live on or own, and decide what happens to it. And so that's just a few, okay? And there really is, everything is my right as long as it doesn't cause harm to others. So it's really an infinite number of rights that I have, inalienable rights. The right to travel for business or pleasure, or the right to move, the right to migrate. So if those things were common amongst us, then we would have common sense around that. But you see, because we're being infiltrated by a socialist agenda to take away all of our rights, and they're using diversity as a way to divide us, we've lost common sense. We don't really have common sense anymore the way we used to. But what we do have access to is intuition, and we can use intuition instead of common sense now. But the word common unity is faith in action, common unity. I guess how I would interpret that right now, given that we don't have that much in common anymore, is that if I'm prayerful, then I'm able to set aside my differences with you and put all of our needs first, and that will place me in a state of unity. So common unity then becomes faith in action. Faith, meaning that I trust that everything's going to work out for the highest good of all concerned. In action means that I can act knowing that that's true. So I don't have to hoard or kill you before you kill me, or protect myself from you when there's nothing seemingly to protect myself from. Okay, so common unity is faith in action. We recognize with sovereignty of the individual comes personal responsibility for the community. That's another huge statement, because what it's saying is we recognize that with sovereignty of the individual comes personal responsibility for the community. So that's directly flies in the face of the satanic belief that I get mine and I don't care what you get is not sovereignty. Sovereignty means my individual freedom is guaranteed as long as I take personal responsibility for my community. I can't have one without the other. I personally am an anarchist. What that means is an archon. Archon is ruler, and means without rulers. But that doesn't mean there are no rules. For me personally, I have to use principles to rule the inner monarchy. That's what I use morality for. So I don't need to be told what to do by the state because I'm using spiritual law to rule myself through God and prayer, meditation, and service work. Collectively, we are committed to open and honest communication. Together, we can create an environment where conflict and differences are expressed openly and safely. Individually, we practice nonviolence. As individuals and as a group, we are constantly in the process of evolving the ability to resolve conflict without violence. So what this means to me is that coming from that place that I just mentioned, I can have the flexibility of spirit to invite all diverse points of view so that we can come together and find our common purpose and our common solution to our common problem, which our common problem at this moment would be that the world is trying to impose tyranny on us. So our common solution is yet to be discovered, but it's going to be the opposite of what they're putting out there. As individuals and as a group, we are constantly in the process of evolving the ability to resolve conflict without violence, you know, and they talked about this in the beginning about how creativity is the seed within conflict. So you want to be able to get to that seed without squelching the conflict because we're afraid of conflict. We are committed to living simply. I mean, I like that myself. Live simply so that others may simply live. I really do like that, and trying to live in that idea in this incredibly affluent and consumeristic, materialistic society is very difficult. We do not own people or things. Well, that's kind of in the, I don't know, I have to look at this more carefully, but because you know, I own property and I own myself. But I think I understand philosophically what this means. We have open, non-possessive, honest, egalitarian relationships with consenting peers. We are all students and teachers. We give unconditional support to those dependent upon us. We are stewards of the earth and all her relations. We strive for sustainable systems in all our endeavors. Within our community, we are creating a social order which is based upon honesty and trust, nonviolence and self-empowerment, and equality and democracy. Within the larger society, we are an alternative society with a vision of encouraging the outbreak of peace. We are not turning away from the existing society. We are the hope and the future of society. So you have to remember, okay, these people were like the extreme left back in the 70s. But back then, the extreme left was actually progressive. It was actually humanitarian, not as it is now at all. But they do say some things that are a little kooky, like they didn't realize that democracy was the seat of socialism at that time. Or maybe they didn't realize that socialism was what we now know it to be. So we kind of have to translate some of this stuff. I feel. I mean, I feel like there's more good in this book than there is bad, but I do see, you know, the shadow of the old ways that led up to where we are now. Although, I mean, if you think about it, like the groups that use this, for example, like the Rainbow Gathering, those people were not I don't think those people would have bought into this stuff at all. They would still be about freedom. Those people are about freedom. And there's been a lot of shady goings on with false light. Let's put it that way. The dark and the false light. And this is truth. There's a lot of truth in here, but there's a lot of terms that come from the false light in this book, I've noticed. But that doesn't mean I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't believe I can own other people, but I do own things, but I don't have to be possessed by the things I own. You know, we are all students and teachers and stewards of the earth. You know, that's under natural law that there is no authority. There's only the creator as the ultimate authority, and we are all brothers and sisters. Huh. Okay, well, that's going to be it for today. I'm just going to read this one page today, and then we'll go on from there next time.